We'll start with opening statement.
Yes. Tough way to go out. Unfortunate. It's hard to. Liberty's a really good team. It's a really good program, coached by a really good coach. I think in the 9 seasons he's been there, I don't think he's had a losing season. And so I knew what we were up against. And, they obviously got on. I don't even know how far Liberty is, whether they took a bus ride or if they got on a plane. They got on a plane or a bus and they brought business. And thought our guys fought hard in the second half and kind of woke up, but against a postseason team, a team that's won 25, now 26 games, you can't get down 14 or whatever, 14 or 15. Just can't get down. And, it's that time of the year, man. There's only 2 teams in the country that end their season the way they want it to end, as the NCAA champions and the NIT champions. And, I wanted this win for our seniors to be able to get 1-1 EBA, and it didn't go our way, but that's the game we play, so it's unfortunate.
Jahari, what did you think happened there in the first half to put you guys involved?
In the first half, I think that we missed a couple easy shots that we normally make. They came out ready to play. Liberty, credit to them. They played hard. They made shots. They were doing everything with intention. I think that, we just came up short.
And for what happened in the second half, what did you feel like kind of spurred you in particular in terms of being able to close that gap and have the second half, you guys as a team and you individually?
Honestly, I just wanted to win. Didn't want the season to end, really. Just wanted to keep playing for these coaches, keep playing for the seniors, all the teammates. I just wanted to keep playing, just see how far we could actually go with this game.
And what was the mindset coming into tonight? I know it was tough to kind of pivot from what happened to Pittsburgh here. Did you just feel like you guys had that same level of energy that you had been having most of the season?
I think that after the loss, our energy was pretty much down, but then once we started practicing and, being around each other again, we picked our energy back up. It's hard to face a conference loss like that in a conference tournament when, we had aspirations of making it to the NCAA tournament. So.
And just the amount of layups that they got, whether it was on back screens or hard weak side cuts, just what was the issue with having that defended?
Just not being in the right spot. We overplayed their shooters for the most part. So just everybody being a little bit spaced out, not being able to help because they so much more dangerous from 3. So they got a lot of easy open layups.
Jahari, with your collegiate experience, can you just talk about what makes this team unique? What will you remember from this team?
From this team, just the joy that they had with being around each other, just the joy that we had being around each other. Every time you'll see 2 teammates, it would be like, they'll be comfortable with one another. Just the comfortability that we had, the care that we had, the will to win. Even when things weren't going our way, we still, stayed together. We never veered off from each other. We never pointed the finger. We all just competed and, we stayed close the whole way. From beginning to end, we were close even from the summer all the way till now. We just been unbelievably close.
Jahari, speaking of that closeness, trying to make that second half comeback there, and you showed incredible leadership, trying to show poise. What was kind of the mindset that you were trying to give to your teammates, and even if you had any advice from Tony to try to stay poised to try to close out that last second half?
Honestly, just win. That's all. Just do whatever it takes to win. A lot of people won't have this opportunity again on our team. The seniors, they'll probably, you never know, but they could be done. This could have been their last basketball game. Just really wanted to win. Hopefully, there's no telling who will win that Nevada or Murray State game, but hopefully to get another road trip in, just stay together. That's all I really wanted.
Jahari, so you played all 40 minutes tonight. I don't think you came out a single time. Why don't you kind of talk about what that was like? I think that's the first time you've done that all season, first time anybody here has done that all season.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't think anything of it. I think I was a little bit more prepared, just the way I was eating before the game. I wasn't didn't feel like tired or anything. I think I was well hydrated, so I was just happy to be playing basketball again. You know, I can't take these moments for granted. I've been through so much, so I'm just excited to play basketball. I'm excited to play basketball, whether it's in the NIT or the NCAA tournament. I'm just excited to be out there.
Thank you.
Coach, yeah, anything else for Jari? Oh, sorry. Good, you're good, thank you.
Enjoy.
Coach, this is now the second season in a row that you guys have made the NIT. Prior to last season, first time since 2017, you guys have made the postseason as a program. Can you talk about the direction that the program has been going in?
Yeah, I mean, it's I can only speak for my tenure here as a head coach. Putting this team together. My first opportunity as a head coach. It's such a tough league with some really, really good programs. Winning 20 games in our first year. Bringing a couple guys back and then winning 27 games and really just being, probably one or two non-conference games away from having an opportunity to kind of do what St. Louis did this year. And then losing that team. And, to be honest with you, the loss of Braden O'Connor, I haven't used it as a crutch because I think these guys have just stepped up phenomenally when you lose an all-conference guy. But to keep things in perspective, I think we're like second in the country in what we had to work with from a retention standpoint, 3%, which was Stas. And so, the cadence of what we're doing, I'm a competitor, and, NIT is great, but I've got aspirations for myself. I've got aspirations for George Mason, and we're going to continue to build that standard. We've set the bar pretty high, and I think everyone understands what the expectations are. I think our players do, and I think that's why they're so disappointed. But the reality is, you're either getting better or you're getting worse. There's no middle ground, and for us, we're going to take the high road this offseason, and the guys that are going to be a part of this family are going to get better, and we're going to try to get better in the market as well.
Tony, how would you size up the path that this season took? Because at the end of January, I think you probably would have said you were a little better than you would have thought you were going to be, and then Corey gets hurt and things kind of go sideways.
Yeah, I don't know who I hurt, man, because somebody tried to hurt me in my birthday month in February. But, again, we had, very similar to Liberty in a sense where, they were 25 and whatever their record is going into their conference tournament. Towards the back end of their league play, they dropped a couple games, but they were pretty damn flawless all season long. And, you just get these highs and lows, and when you don't have the depth, it's hard to sustain that. We had pretty much, I said at the start of the season, there wasn't really much of a separation with this group, and you had a couple guys that emerged. Corey did, Jahari did, and Riley. Almost 3 guys were all league guys, but those guys were also on the floor for 36 minutes. And I think that, with the way we play and the expectation and the standard defensively, it wears you out, and it's hard to sustain that. And we're not going to make any excuses, but I essentially almost had, I'd say, 2 starters out. Brain was out, and Fat started the season injured, and irony of then ending the season. I think if Fat is with us, we'll probably squeeze out 2 to 3 more games. But that's just the game we play. As a coach, it's my job to evaluate a bunch of different things and keep things in perspective. But the reality is, I think what we did with this group, I think we squeezed a lot out of this group, and that's the God honest truth. 23 wins is no small feat. There's plenty of programs in the country right now that wish they were playing on ESPN at 6 o'clock, and we were one of them. And unfortunately, we came up short.
And for as long as you've known Jahari, for him to go out with this, right, to have the season that he had and the game that he had, particularly that second half, just how fulfilling was it to be a part of that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy for him. I love the kid. I know he wants it. And, sometimes my gripe with him is he's just so 50-50 and just, he's on H-Town time all the time. But I think he's been phenomenal all season. And if you'd have asked me, when he committed to George Mason, would he ever play 40 minutes? And I would have told you absolutely not. So I'm happy for him that he was able to get through the season after taking 2 years off to come back and be, a 32-minute guy. I'm happy for him, happy for his mom. They're the greatest. They've been supportive of, everything I've done, even as a coach. And, to see him perform the way he did tonight, 27 points, I'm sure that's career high. I'm happy for him from a personal standpoint. I think it just helps his confidence moving forward.
What makes them so difficult to prepare for with their offense?
I mean, it's difficult to prepare for anybody when you get the call at 10 o'clock that you're playing them the next, a day and a half later. But again, I thought that they did a phenomenal job. We were so worried about guarding the three. Just our rotations and our help side, they kind of overcooked us. I thought that their fours and fives were just really fluid with the ball moving and back cutting. And when you're trying to defend the three and you're top locking shooters, it just leaves the lane wide open. They can hurt you in so many ways. Yes, they're a little smaller than most teams, but those guards are quick twitch. They're backdooring. They're making the right reads, pocket passes, and then their big is just, he's a phenomenal athlete that can pass, that can finish at the rim, and I just thought we weren't in our spots, and then we also miscommunicated late with our switches, and we had a bunch of possessions where we really guarded pretty well for 22, 23 seconds, but then the last cadence we just miscommunicated, and again, when you're trying to get ready for a team like this that can hurt you in so many ways, especially from three, you need some elite defenders and guys that understand rotations, guys that can take what our base is defensively, but then also add the information of the scout. And it's kind of been our issue all season long, retaining that information. But I thought we gave a phenomenal effort in the second half. We tried to change some things up defensively, zoned them a little bit, and kind of got us back in the game. And we're probably one offensive rebound from taking the lead. And that's just kind of, when you get down 14, 16 points against a playoff team, that's what happens.
And as a coach, how fast do you have to pivot? We know what the calendar is when we start talking about portals and stuff like that. Just, do you get to appreciate the season at all before you have to pivot and your staff has to pivot the next season?
You want the truth, or you want coach?
I want the truth.
I mean, we're going to get better, and that doesn't start, on April 7th. We're watching film. Obviously, you don't know what's going to go in the portal officially until April 7th, but, we have a good idea of, what fits us and, who fits this culture and the identity of what this needs to look like. It's painful to watch the teams that have consistently been good in this league, the VCUs, the St. Louis, and the Daytons. But I think for what it's worth, we've done a pretty good job in 3 years of just moving the needle on where we need to be as a program, and that's not going to stop. I've learned a lot, as a coach, and I'm going to continue to get better, and so are our players, so is our staff. Our administration has been supportive, and they'll continue to be supportive. There's just a lot of life right now in Mason basketball, and that's not going to stop. And that requires a lot of film, and so we're definitely being aggressive and making some changes and some additions.
And we always talk about player movement, but assistant coaches, you've been able to keep this staff together. How important is it to come with the same staff back next season?
Yeah, it's important, but I'm not a hater either. I tell my staff all the time, like this time of the year, if I want my coaches to all become head coaches, and when you're successful, that's what happens. If there's ever an opportunity where someone can grow, whether it's at the higher level or it is to be a head coach elsewhere, I'm all for it. I'd love to start a coaching tree, so I'm never the guy that's, I'd love to keep my staff, but I'm never going to stop anybody's growth in their professional, aspirations and stuff like that. But we haven't had much turnover from coaches. I think year one we lost a pretty good one with Mike, who's now in Houston, and he's got a chance to win a national championship. And then last year we also lost a staffer, but we haven't had much movement. I love my staff. I think we're one of the best staffs in the country, and that's a major reason why we've been successful. The close-knit of our guys that we recruited, it starts at the top with our group of, coaches. And so, no one's told me that they're leaving, I'm scarred of, people leaving, like portal guys leaving. Now you're asking me about coaches leaving. Come on, Marcus.
Coach, if you're able to, can you just share the message that you gave to the seniors after the game?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I took, I wasn't in a rush to leave that locker room or come in here, to be honest with you. So I grabbed a seat and just kind of walked them through what this season has been. They hate me because I always tell them that, the places that they came from, they've never won this much. But the reality is, we've got four seniors that those guys all gave us, something through the course of the year. Fat started his season hurt, and he came back, and for a lot of games he was our closer, and then he gets hurt again. Dola's battled some injuries all season long, but the kid's never wavered on just his positivity and his coachability. And Masai, Masai gave us, he gave us some dynamic games, and I wish I would have maybe played him at the 3 a little bit longer. But and then Nick, without Nick, we don't play St. Louis the way we play St. Louis. And unfortunately, Nick was sick today, and he tried to give it his best. But to my seniors, those guys know I love them, man. I love them to death, and I told them the only thing I ask is get your degree, and you're more than welcome at George Mason for life. That's what it is here. We don't use the word family lightly. I know I don't. And for this group to come together so quickly, that took senior leadership. And those 4 guys definitely were, a huge nucleus of why we were successful this season with 23 wins.
Kind of along those lines, at the start of the season, if somebody had told you we'd win 23 games and we'd do it with Braden O'Connor playing only 15 minutes all year, would you call that a successful season?
Well, the measure of success depends on who you're asking, and I got to take my personal, just the way my mind works, I have to take it out of my body and answer that question. It's hard. The business we're in, the landscape we're in, the constant shifting we're in. I think I say it all the time. I think coaches get too much credit sometimes because these kids that you recruit that you don't really know, it requires a certain type of individuals to be able to come together and be successful. And with some of the things that we couldn't control, I do think most teams and most staffs don't figure it out. To be quite honest with you, that's my personal opinion. And to keep it in perspective, yes, Braden O'Connor is a dynamic guy, and we missed that dynamic. And having to play guys like Jahari and Corey 36 minutes a game, it wears you down. It wears you down tremendously. But those guys, they still, Corey's got to have finger surgery here in a couple days. That just shows you the sacrifice that he made. And he's a phenomenal kid, phenomenal human being. And so, this group is, to answer your question in short, they've definitely overachieved my expectation for a group that, essentially I didn't know, and we just put together.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Yep.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.